Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. We're very happy to have you here. And today we will be exploring together how we are listening. The topic today is listening. And we will ask ourselves and share via stories how we're listening to our own selves, to each other, and to the world around us. Otto Scharmer singles out listening as a source of leadership and a core skill. And I also think we've become in many ways better at listening to each other through the past 12 months possibly. And so let's dive into this together. But first of all, I'm going to very quickly introduce you to the moderators that are here today to hold the space for you. So hello everyone, my name is Rachel Hentsch. I'm communications lead at the Presencing Institute, and I have a personal passion for connecting dots, which takes me into all sorts of places, including community building, storytelling, media creation, and experimenting with new solutions. And with me today, holding space, I have Simoon. Simoon Fransen is probably well known to many of you as one of the Presencing Institute hub host supports and community holders. And she is currently working with Meg Wheatley as a European Program Coordinator at the Berkana Institute. And Simoon has been conducting change processes in the sectors of government, education, and business since decades. And we have also Géraud, who is joining us from the East Coast, and Géraud is part of the Presencing Institute core team. He is supporting the 2X, ULab 2X and Gaia programs, and he's a research affiliate at the MIT CoLab, pursuing a joint degree in urban planning and public policy. Oh, and I see Michelle has joined us also. Hello, Michelle. Happy to see you here.
Happy to be here.
Michelle is founder of Africans United, and she's building circular economies in service of Africa, its people, and the world. Michelle has been an active participant since many years in our PI programs and has been a facilitator for the Ubuntu Lab. And Anastasia, joining us from Moscow, Russia, is a steward and space holder for the Presencing Institute and Theory U in Russia, and has been holding space for the Russian edition of the Gaia Journey that is currently running. And we have also Julie. Julie, even though you are not our moderator today, would you like to unmute and say hello and tell us where you're dialing in from?
Hi Rachel, hi everyone. I'm dialing in from Bari, Italy, in Tuscany. And good to be here. I don't know whether I can stay the whole time, but happy to.
Wonderful. Thank you for joining us. And I can tell from your footsteps that I think you're probably in some wonderful outdoors landscape. So everyone, thank you for joining us. Today we are going to look at the topic of listening and how are we listening to ourselves, to each other, and to the world around us. So I will now just help us land and center for a moment. Let's take one moment to connect into our bodies and into the moment, and also perhaps just warm up our capacity to listen. So I invite you to check in with your body and tend to your inner condition, and we're going to do this together. So take a deep breath. You might wish to lower your gaze. Perhaps you want to close your eyes. If you're sitting, feel the point of contact of your body with your seat. If your feet are on the ground, feel your feet on the ground, on this good Mother Earth supporting us. And let's notice our energy in this moment. How did we come into this room? And what's the vibration we're carrying? Let's take a moment to find and meet our body and notice any parts that are manifesting or crying out. Is there tightness? Are there any knots? if you feel that, send some energy, some breath energy to those parts. A bit of loving attention for the parts of your body that are tense. And take a moment to scan your inner landscape. What's present for you now in this moment? Connect to that without judging, just taking a moment to notice. Let's feel the strength in the back of our body and our head connected to the open sky of possibility. And send some breath energy to the heart, upwards to the sky, and horizontally to each other as we connect across the world. And with the last few breaths that you take consciously, listen to the inner hum of your body. Listen to the sounds around you and that surround you. And with that, we can now take a breath and land together in this space. So, we are speaking today about how are we listening to ourselves and to each other. Just a few housekeeping notes. So we will reset the room every so often. Please note that we are recording this session so that we can reshare it with non-iOS users. And so please do not speak if you do not want your voice to be recorded. So if you raise your hand, you will be then invited to come onto the stage. You will have a microphone and you will be able to speak. So if you don't want to be recorded and reshared, please refrain. When invited to speak, please use the convention of opening by saying your name and the location. And then when you are finished speaking, wrap up by saying again your name, your place, and I'm done speaking. We will be possibly moving some speakers back to the audience in batches after some conversation time on stage, but we'll also be going with the flow. And before we launch into our conversation, I would like to welcome Antoinette. Hi, Antoinette.
Hi, everyone. Good to be here. Sorry, I'm a couple minutes behind our start, but glad to be here with everyone.
Thank you. We're so happy for your presence, and we know you're jumping straight into this space from a previous commitment, and we're happy to have you with us. So let's dive in. So how are we listening to our own selves? And let's listen to each other as we explore this. I will just maybe open by quoting some parts of Otto Scharmer's book, extracted from the Essentials of Theory Use. So Otto says listening is probably the most underrated leadership skill. And I wonder, Antoinette, would you like to speak to that in some way?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I love a lot of this work, and I think, listening being the most underrated leadership skill feels quite poignant as a place to start because, just our traditional notion of leadership, when we think of the idea of a leader, it's someone at the front telling everybody what to do, and someone, even if they're coming from behind, they're telling everybody what to do, and there's sort of, they have the vision, they have the idea of what needs to be happening, and so what does it really mean to lead by listening? And a friend, one of our colleagues, said to me the other day, you help me grow without you, or you make space for me to grow. No, he said, you grow me without even trying. And I thought that was fascinating because just by listening to another human being, they grow, just by giving space to someone to kind of figure it out for themselves. And when we can do that for others as well, there's so much that's already here. And so when we really just open up the space for listening to one another, there really is so much that's possible. And maybe, what we could do is just hear a few people sharing if anyone wants to share any of their own experience about listening in leadership. And then in a few minutes I'll share, or someone can share, maybe the 4 levels of listening, and we can go deeper with that. But if anyone would like to share now, you could raise your hand, or any mods would like to share, you could flash your mic. Anything about this particular topic.
Thanks, Antoinette. I'm reminded of something I came across quite recently, which is Nancy Klein's thinking environment also. I think that there is something empowering about being seen and heard. And so one of the 10 components of the thinking environment was, actually the first one was listening and paying attention with what she calls palpable respect and without interruption. And I like the idea of leadership as, not necessarily being to do with leading by trailblazing up front, but holding space also from behind and allowing people's voices to be seen and heard. And Michelle, I can see your mic flashing. I'd love to know whether you would like to share something with us.
I was actually just clapping to what you were saying, but okay, I'll contribute. I love this conversation because listening for me, having worked with a few EU tools, it actually helped me to realize that listening is just so much more than just using the ears, that there is the eyes, there is the ability to sense and to feel, and to hear in multiple ways. I mean, I posted a couple of days ago on Twitter, my son had packed the dishwasher. And when I opened up the dishwasher in the morning, it was like all jam-packed with dishes. But it was fascinating for me because just at looking at how this dishwasher was packed, I was listening into what were all the conversations that were going on in his mind. And it prompted a curiosity in me to actually ask the question. And taking that into a workspace, I find that just listening, not just with the ears, but, with all the senses that you have, can unlock so much, not just in what you're hearing, but also for yourself and how you're approaching situations. So it certainly resonates with me that leadership or listening rather, is an untapped skill, but just how much capacity and possibility we're able to unleash when we listen with all our organs of perception.
I love this blending of the senses, Michelle, because I saw that picture you're speaking about with all the dishes piled in, and I find it fascinating and intriguing that you are blending the listening and the seeing, and what are the boundaries between listening and seeing, and where does seeing stop and where does listening begin? And it's striking me now that the Italian verb to hear, which is sentire, also means, it's also tactile. So sentire is what you feel on the skin. It's also what you feel within in terms of emotions, and it's also hearing with the ears. So that's an interesting sort of all-encompassing word.
I'll jump in. I just love I love that concept of listening as feeling, or listening as sensing. And Otto has been talking a lot about recently this kind of feeling knowing. So when I think about sensing and really deeply listening in is activating these other parts of the senses. So I'll say that on a personal note, the last 12 hours or so I've been on the phone with family in India, and or maybe more, and just listening into all of the different experiences of what's happening right now, in crisis mode, it's also a festival time, and there's kind of religious celebrations, but also deep devastating crisis happening in the country, and I'm listening to the words, of course, that my family is sharing, but I'm also deeply listening to the feeling behind the words, you know, and what I feel in my body when I hear their voices or their tone, you know, and it's a body listening, you know, it's a much deeper listening than just a kind of mental, you know, fact listening. And maybe just to say about the 4 levels of listening, you know, we talk about 4 levels of listening as, there's Simba, listening to the world outside. But there's, you know, 4 levels of listening. One is downloading, and that's kind of, you know, just taking in information and just kind of hearing the words and taking that and kind of regurgitating it back. And then there's factual listening, which is, you know, just listening for the facts in the conversation. And then there's empathic listening. And empathic listening kind of invites us to go to the edge of our own experience and maybe cross outside of our own experience and step into someone else's shoes. And then there's generative listening. And generative listening is listening also for what's possible, what could be co-created, what, you know, lives between us. And so I share that like personal experience just because of where I am right now and, you know, what's been going on, but also because doing this work with these 4 levels of listening has also opened me up to having these different portals. You know, it's the eyes, it's the, you know, physical cues, but it's also a kind of emotional, or like having this almost other body, you know, this part of my body to listen with. So I'm curious, you know, what those experiences have been like for you. And if anyone wants to share, I am Antoinette and done speaking.
Thank you, Antoinette, for your reminding us for 4 levels of listening. And now I speak with you from Russia, from Moscow. And now for us it's so important. This is very simple, but a very deep connection with each other. It's a deep level of listening. And I remember my first experience with Otto when we met first time in Boston and in PFP program and foundation program. And after it, I said that, oh, Otto, you are the first person who really see me. This is mean, what about you said, that if you really listen what person said, you feel, you can see this person. And this is about feelings. You can be in so deep connection, and it's really something you can bond between you and this person. And I think in our time, it's very difficult time in our world. These tools, it's the most important what we can do. We can listen and feel each other. So thank you for this very important topics for me, and I think for all of us. And I'm Anastasia from Russia, from Moscow. I'm done speaking. Thank you.
Thank you, Anastasia. Simoon, would you like to share something with us?
Yes, thank you. While listening, there's so much information going through me, and it brought me back to, I think, well, some of you will know him, John Milton, who was my teacher for years and one of the co-founders of Theory of the U process. And we, he created the Way of Nature, and so although John was the teacher, he taught us how to have nature as a teacher. And I think that is still the daily practice for me, especially the animals around us here. We have a small farm, especially the horses. So the levels of listening, what is required to go deeper with the quality of listening. How do you access open heart? How do you access open will to receive the information behind the language, I guess, behind the words? And so to go back to one of the quotes that I think we are all familiar with, the success of an intervention depends on the interior condition of the intervener. So what is required to listen good? Because I think it's all so equal, and I know for myself that when I'm not in a good state, when I'm hungry or tired, all these things, they stop me from being a good listener. And if I say listener, I am not speaking about my ears. Sometimes I get completely confused, like where's the information coming in? But the information comes to us, but then we have to do something with it. Whether it's words or sounds or whatever, we hear, we listen, and then what is the story we make from it? So what I want to bring in is the importance of body-mind synchronization in order to listen well. I heard once someone compare like your body as the camera, and then your mind as the film in there, and that you have to synchronize the two of them, otherwise you don't have the sharp picture. And for me it's the same with listening. How do you find a way to work well with information that comes to you? What is the story that you make of it? Being aware of your story is different than the story of someone else. But I think it goes back to also the importance of self-care and humbleness. Yeah.
Thank you, Simoon. Thank you for your contribution. I would like to welcome Hala to the stage. I'll just do a quick reset for those who have just joined us. So we are speaking to the topic of how we listen to our own selves and to each other. This session is being recorded, so please do not speak if you don't want your voice to be captured. When invited to speak, please use the convention of opening and by saying your name and location, and wrap up by saying I'm done speaking, and repeat your name and location. I'm sorry, I didn't role model that very well earlier. And I would love to, with this, invite Hala. This is Rachel from Rome. I'm done speaking, and over to Hala.
Thank you, Rachel. I can really follow up from what Simoon was speaking to, because I'm calling from Beirut, Lebanon, and because I feel that the first practice of listening is our inner listening, and once that is so fine-tuned, then in connection to others, it actually then starts to happen. And this practice of this inner listening comes through the body, through the wisdom of the body, as Simoon was also mentioned. And I want to just give an example of that. So the past few days, I felt a calling to go and visit a specific place. Something within me was telling me, visit this sacred site, and I followed it. And so I arrived there on Saturday, and it's a cave in a mountain, and it's the source of a river. And recently they have opened it up, and they've built a bridge within the cave. So when I stepped inside the mouth of the cave, and I just stood on that bridge, that was the essence of actually practicing the listening, because the flow of the water and the strength of the water and this immense flow that was going, it was just rippling under me, around me, and going through, and it was so that I had to fine-tune into the listening, and in that there was this moment when I felt I became the flow. And I feel that this is the essence of the listening that I capture within the yield process, and how I have developed it within myself. Because until we drop into the heart, and until we drop into the heart in connection to our bodies, then that flow of listening to the to wisdom of what is being said in the spaces in between conversations with others, can sometimes also still slip. And this is what I just wanted to bring, is that we have to cultivate that heart space and cultivate that listening in our own daily activities within ourselves. And that actually expands and makes it available for us to then practice it with others. I'm Hannah, complete.
Thank you very much, Hala, for sharing this. I could imagine that bridge and the rippling water, and how nature sometimes can call us to tune into our inner voices. And I would love to ask our moderators if they have any questions or comments they'd like to contribute at this time before we pass it over to Oksana and Elizabeth. Géraud, were you wanting to speak?
I'm hesitating to speak. Hi, everybody. My name is Géraud. I'm outside of Boston, Massachusetts. It's a little bit windy here. I apologize. No, I'm in this conversation and I'm listening, and I'm holding what has been really a struggle for me and continues to be. And I guess this is kind of the core struggle of what we're talking about. Antoinette, I loved the point that you made earlier about how much we need to be listened to. And I think of an essay that I read. I don't remember the name of the author. I wish that I could cite them and give them credit, that described listening as that said that the human ear is like a flower that turns towards the sun, that we need, that we are like flowers that turn towards the sun as we turn towards the ear, that we need to be listened to in order to flourish, in order to grow, in order to find our place. And the notion that giving this is a core part of what it is to, I guess, to exercise leadership. What I struggle with is when you have a vision, when you have an idea of what you're moving towards, I just find it so difficult to hold back on naming what that vision and that idea is, and to hold steady with listening. And I think that it takes a confidence that there will be time, that there will be opportunity to move slowly towards that. But I often find myself acting in a rush, acting as though there won't be time, that I need to get everything out instead of taking the time to listen. And so this is how to do this is something that I'm always holding, and I wanted to share that question in this space. My name is Géraud, and I am done speaking.
Thanks, Géraud. Thank you very much. This acting in a rush, yes, it resonates with me, because we are mostly pressured to come up with something, right? So as I was listening to this conversation in this room, I'm also wondering, what does it mean to be able to stay with and hold silence, and what can emerge through that, and what does listening to silence mean? And Elizabeth, I see you've unmuted. Were you wanting to contribute some thoughts?
Yes, good morning, everyone. I'm Elizabeth. I'm in San Francisco, which is, I think of it as the southern end of Salmon Nation. And I'm thrilled to be investigating listening, and that the whole community is investigating listening. I think is such a powerful question to be asking. I have been noticing since COVID came in and we've been, quote unquote, put on pause, how much listening is a great tool for us. I myself, I think of myself as a horse. I love to gallop and feel the wind in my hair. And Géraud, that idea of acting in a rush can also just be part of like our hoarseness. And so what I've been trying to do during this period is act more like the turtle and slow down and listen. And I've been kind of doing an investigation about this. I was with one of our teachers recently, Arawana, and I asked her, where does this listening come from? Because some of us on this call have talked about it's coming from our heart. Sometimes we feel it in our gut. And she said she didn't know where it came from. But Otto refers to it as our feeling knowing. And as Simoon was saying, listening to ourselves so powerfully that when we're moved to go and do something, that we have enough spaciousness around us that we can actually hear that little voice and go and do it. And how synchronized we become with nature. I'm just wondering, like, where that impulse is that's so universal. And I just would end with a little story, which was right at the beginning of COVID. I was out on the beach around San Francisco Bay, and I saw a whale, and she was just swimming back and forth. I've never seen a whale in San Francisco Bay, and I felt like I got a listening from her that if we each did a little part, that if we each changed a little part of our own habits, that nature would rise up and meet us, and we would be able to address these climate change issues. So there's some wonderful benefit by having enough spaciousness around us to listen to ourselves and each other and the earth and the field. Thanks. I'm Elizabeth, and I'm done speaking.
Thank you very much, Elizabeth. Simoon, were you wanting to respond? I see you've unmuted.
Yes. Listening. So I'm Simoon, and I'm from the Netherlands, so I'm learning here. I once saw the documentary No Greater Love, and that's something really to recommend. It's about a monastery. I think it's in Notting Hill, and it's a fascinating movie about how the women are living there in silence almost all the time. I think during the day there's 45 minutes where they are allowed to speak, and they do some knitting, and so it is a very quiet video to watch. And I remember I was sort of bored, and I had these ideas about living in a monastery, and like you become a nun. So I'm sorry to say this, but like if you don't have anything in your life, then you can always become a nun. So that wasn't my whole assumption. And watching the video in the silence, there was some boredom coming in, and then there was this knitting, and that was also the moment where the journalist was able to ask the women some questions about their lives, about their communication, about their daily routines. And so the nun is finally speaking, and she's doing her knitting, and then he asks her, doesn't it ever become boring, that silence? And that moment she stops with knitting, and she lets her hands rest in her lap, her eyes like above her glasses, and she looks at him and she says, there's a moment where the silence turns into music. And I think it's a beautiful practice to find that moment, because it is there, and it is a practice. And it completely changed my perspective of living in a monastery. It now has become a wish. Later when I grow up. So there's so much that we can find in the silence, whether it is about us or each other, or I loved how you started this, Rachel, life around us. It's all there. And I'm done.
Thanks, Simoon. You're reminding me, I have been toying with the idea of going on a silent retreat, and there's a part of me that's longing for that, and a part of me that's kind of really apprehensive and dreading that that moment. And I think I will go to that, but I like, if that silence turns to music, then that might be that might be quite enticing. I would like to invite Oksana to speak. Oksana, hello.
Hi to everyone, my name is Oksana and I'm speaking from Argentinian Patagonia. Thank you for this beautiful conversation. Listening to everyone in this room, I felt really synchronized with you, Rachel, when you told about sentire, that means feeling. In Italian, I know a little bit Italian, so I know what you mean. And I also loved what Antoinette told about listening to oneself. That's a physical feeling of listening. And Géraud also that concept of slowing down and not being in a rush. So I really felt very synchronized with what he was talking about, because that I mentioned in one of the previous conversations that I created my Slow Marketing Club for entrepreneurs just to slow down and listen first of all to themselves. What do they want, and how do they want to express themselves in this world? And I wanted to tell you about that. It's not kind of problem that I have of listening, but that experience that I have when I try to listen deeply to other persons. I noticed that I need to have really a high level of energy in order to be really empathetic and to share that space, the whole space for the person whom I'm listening and with whom I'm speaking on the deep level. And the problem is that if I'm speaking with a kind of complicated or even toxic person, I feel that I really feel bad after that conversation. For example, yesterday I talked with one potential client, and although it was a conversation of 15 minutes, I felt on the couch and I fell asleep after 2 cups of coffee. So I really was, I'm very tuned to the client or to the person with whom I'm speaking and with whom I'm working, because if it will be a long-term contract, we will be share a lot of time together and a lot of energy together in order to bring the project into the reality, or in order to scale the project. So I try to feel the person and feel if we're able to work together. But yesterday it was for me an awful experience when I just felt destroyed after 15 minutes, and I could get up and continue with my day and my work in just in a couple of hours. So that's for me the, let's say, the dark side of deep listening, because it depends a lot of what kind of person is on the other side of the conversation. Well, I'm Oksana and I'm done speaking. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Oksana, for sharing the darker side of what it means to listen deeply. Yes, listening is also connecting into the energy, right? And when we connect into the energy, there's some kind of a transfer that happens. So if you are dealing with, if you're tuning into someone who's toxic, I suppose that will also rub off in some manner. I will do a very, very quick reset of the room. We are speaking about listening to ourselves, to each other, to the world around us, and how that shapes our decision and our perception. Please note we're recording the session for reshare, so please do not speak if you do not want to be recorded. And please use the convention of saying your name and location when you are invited to speak, and wrap up stating once again your name and your location, and I'm done speaking. And this is Rachel from Rome. I'm done speaking, and I would like to invite Nicole to contribute her thoughts.
Hi, thank you. Yeah, this is Nicole in Toronto, and just wanted to add a point around the real power and gift for me in listening lies in the ability to fully witness another, and the validating power that has, the effect it can have on another, when we are able to create that deep holding space in which we can take in another, as was mentioned, with all the senses. The eyes take them in, the ears can take them in, even the felt sense can take them in. And there is just something about being fully received in that scene that I think lands for us as human beings, and again, just really validates our existence. So this is Nicole in Toronto, and I'm done speaking.
Thank you, Nicole. Thank you very much. Ivona, you're up next. Hello, Ivona.
Hi, thank you. My name is Ivona. I'm calling from Zurich, Switzerland. Thank you for sharing all of your thoughts and ideas on this topic. I think they're all very wonderful. I really appreciate that I could join you today. I would like to share with you something that I was observing for a little while recently, and it's the, let's say, inner voice, but maybe the voice in our minds that we have. I'm sure you have this voice too. Sometimes very judgmental, right? Saying like, oh, that's good, that's bad, or sometimes also very creative in a very positive way. So I was wondering, what is your experience with this one? I started to observe this, let's say, voice, all of the thoughts I have, and I started wondering also, why do I think even this way, or why this particular, let's say, voice, my thoughts, why they're even there? Is there any reason, or is there anything deeper inside of me that I need to listen to understand even the sometimes judgmental / sometimes very creative voice? So that's one thing I wanted to share with you, and maybe you can also share with me your thoughts on this topic. And the second one is that I'm just, a short story. I met recently a person who has this great skills to listen with maybe, sensing, I would call it this way. So basically you don't need to say anything to her. She will just sense you so well that she will tell you, oh, I see or I sense that you are struggling with this one, or that you have this thoughts, for example. And for me, it was a wonderful encounter to meet her in general, because I just realized that people have so many different talents, and maybe this talent is also something that we all have, this type of very deep sensing, even though we haven't yet discovered these talents for us. So that was a few thoughts from my end. I'm done speaking. Thank you for listening.
Thank you so much, Ivona. I would like to open up your question to all of our speakers who've come onto the stage, and our moderators. Can you please repeat the question that you had for us, so that we can invite others to respond to it?
Sure. So basically, we all have this voice inside of our heads, which is very often very judgmental, also very creative. For example, saying something is good, something is bad. I started to observe this voice, and I started asking myself, oh, why is it even so? Why do I even think this type of thing? So my question to you is, did you also observe, or do you also observe your inner brain or mind voices, or like voice in general? And if so, how do you experience it?
Simoon.
Yeah. Yeah, all the time. And it is wonderful, and it's awful at the same time. So I think it's great as a starting point to be aware of all those voices, because then there's a moment of choice. Are you listening, or are you telling the voices to go back to their box and be quiet for today because they're not functional? And it's not easy, because some are very clear and some are more hidden. And I think this goes with what we spoke about, different levels of listening. And there are all the voices of judgment and of cynicism and of fear. And, I still think that they are there to guide us, only not functional. So we have our experiences, and based on what happened
at a certain point in our lives with a certain context, that's the information that is trying to, on a very basic level, to prevent shit to happen. Whether it is very simple, like you don't want to burn your fingers again on something that's hot, or something more complex when it's in a work environment and you don't want to be the one that says something, then you know because it is innovative and you will meet some judgment and you are the one who's always doing that. So, and what we do as humans, we make patterns all the time, and the thing that makes it something to like or dislike is just giving us some ease in how to navigate through life. So when you have the judgment, it's good, it's bad. So you go this way, you go that way. And I think that is where, again, it requires for us to be very awake, noticing it, being aware, and then making the choice how to relate it. And it sounds like a very big exercise. And I think you can do this very quickly. And the more you practice again, the quicker it can go, so the faster. So yes, I do recognize the voices. And I would like to thank them. Because they mean well, and just sometimes it's not functional. But I think to listen to them is a good starting point, and I'm done.
Thanks, Simoon. Thank you very much. Any other one amongst our moderators or from other speakers, would you like to also talk about the voice inside your head? Antoinette?
Yeah, I'm happy to. And then I also see Tumi-san. I mean, the thing that comes up for me is like, as, partly what Simoon was just saying, but as we start to develop an awareness of the voices that are coming up, I used to ask one of my mentors and colleagues what she did to kind of remember in the moment, because I feel like sometimes it's just a pattern, like how I respond to something is just a pattern of reaction, a pattern of, this is how I tend to do it, so this then just keeps happening. And when we are awake to it, or when we just kind of become more aware and more conscious of that pattern and that, response that continues to happen, then we can choose to do it differently. And the question to me is, how do you remember that? And she said she wiggles her toes, and it's something that awakens the body, because the body actually helps me to remember, that I'm not just this like particular mood, or I'm not just this particular thought that's running through my head, or I'm not just this particular response, that I have other options available to me. So remembering to wiggle my toes is a whole other thing, but sometimes it's, taking space or doing something else just to shift my body movement or awareness or something like that. So that's, just my little thought process on what's come up so far. And I'll pass it over to Tumi-san, and I'm Antoinette and done speaking.
Thank you so much, Antoinette. So I've always believed that everybody, I'm Tumi-san, and I'm from South Africa. So I always believe that everybody, we always have that sixth sense, because if something bad were to happen, everybody would always say, but I felt that, I knew it. You feel something tingling at the back of your head. So I feel like the more you listen and the more you're attuned, that's how we're able to capture it. But I feel like if you sit intentionally and listen, you will hear them. Everybody has that. It's just how we listen. They always say there's a frequency. It depends on what frequency you tuned in, and that's where you sense it or feel it. Thank you. That's what's coming up for me. Tumi-san from South Africa. Thank you.
Thanks, Tumi-san. And I'm wondering, just, as this is all coming up, I'm wondering what practices people use. What practices in this room do we use to activate these deeper sources of listening? And, what comes up for you? Okay.
Hi, I'm Oksana. I'm from Argentinian Patagonia. That's just the point that I forgot to tell when I was speaking about deep listening. That for me, a great switch in listening and in synchronizing between listening to myself and listening to another person was when I started practicing yoga in 2017. It's already 4 years ago. And that's the kind of physical practice and body practice helped me a lot to feel if I have enough energy to listen to another person, and also to find some inner sources in myself when I feel that I'm just going out of energy. And I have my yoga mat always just near me, so when I feel that I'm not okay and I'm not okay listening to other people, so I just go to my yoga mat and spend half an hour practicing, and then I am able to go back and to be really included in the conversation with other persons. So I'm Oksana and I'm done speaking. Thank you.
Thanks, Oksana. I'm curious if others have practices. I'm also a yoga person, and sometimes I can just take a deep breath and it changes something for me. So thank you for sharing that. Are there other thoughts? From anyone up here? I mean, I can share more. Since we're all, I think also when we start talking about listening, it happened for me earlier, I start talking about listening and then I don't want to talk anymore because I just want to, activate the power of listening. And what I, want to do is just hear someone share a story or something like that. So I'll keep a lookout. Rachel, did you want to share something?
Sorry, actually, I'm trying to move Edith to the stage as I was listening to you, but I kind of pressed the wrong button, I think.
Good.
There we go.
It's the question to me then is, how we hold that for ourselves and, have a practice between. Arowana talks about movement and stillness, and so for me it's like speaking and listening and having that space of discussion or kind of vibrance of feeling the resonance of when it's time to speak and when it's time to listen, and when and just that general cadence is something that comes up for me of how we feel into that in a conversation even with ourselves. So Edith, I wonder if you want to share anything, just so you come up.
Hello, everybody. I'm calling from Barcelona, and yes, I wanted to share that when I feel those voices, I always try to inquire about this to myself, because if I can, in the moment I have these voices, I try to do it later, because always they are giving me information, because there are some emotions that are under the surface that I'm not so aware about it. So I just try to go inside and inquire what is trying to tell me. Because, for example, in conversation with another person, if sometimes is something that is bothering me, I really find very interesting to go deeper, just to see what is trying to tell to me. As you said before, we always have to listen. First, my practice is first to listen to myself. If something is not bothering me, then trying to listen better to the other person. Because when I really feel better with me, I can listen better to outside, no? And also being aware of listening to the social field. That's my practice, just inquire about it. Thank you.
Thank you, Edith, for sharing. And I wonder if now is a good time to just do a little landing and grounding moment, because I think what you just shared of going inside and really seeing what's available, what do I have to offer to anyone else? How do I check within me and make sure that I'm good and ready to hold space for somebody else? So I invite us to just land for a minute wherever you are, and maybe tune into this inner listening place that we each have. And so if you can get both feet on the ground, if you are in a building, that's okay. Just getting your feet flat on the floor, the ground, wherever you are, and just feeling into that rooted connection to Earth. And that sort of essence of being human is having that rooted, grounded connection to planet Earth and planet Self. So just inhaling and exhaling. If there are any sounds, just acknowledging them and then letting them go. And if there's some thoughts start to roll in, just connecting with them for a moment and then letting them go. Following the breath. Tuning into the energy and attention around the heart. Perhaps just feeling into the sensations, what it feels like to have a beating heart and feet on the ground. And then feel also the head, crown of the head, perhaps connected to the sky. A sense of possibility and openness. Just feeling any sensations that might be moving through the body. Perhaps breathing in to a place where you might feel tension. Just noticing if you hear anything from inside, any voices, any thoughts. And as Simoon shared, perhaps give a thank you. A thank you to that voice or to the thought for what it might be trying to teach you, share with you, protect you from. Just tuning into this inner listening. And knowing you can come back to this breath and to this body, on the earth body, at any time. When you're ready, you can maybe open your eyes, and even if no one's around, maybe give yourself a little smile. You can put a hand on your heart and just thank yourself for spending some time here with yourself. And I'll pass it back over to Rachel.
Thank you so much, Antoinette, for taking us into this practice. And I think something has ripened for Jessica. And I would like to invite Jessica to share with us before we wrap up. Jessica, over to you.
Hello. Thanks for having me up here. Something came up for me, and I was thinking about a story of when I was working with people who had survived some very, very difficult traumas in their life. And at the time, I was tuning into the hardships that they were facing. And so So going back to what Oksana said about the energy, whether you have enough energy to listen to another person, and I found that was very challenging on my energy. And then also, even as a listener, even when I was only listening and not responding, and this goes back to, the voices that come up and what you're curious about when you're listening. And I realized that I was curious about the hardships. I was really curious about what they had gone through and how much they had suffered. And I was deeply empathizing with that. But at the same time, I think as I was listening, it's those tiny gestures of the hmms and the leaning in and the raising the eyebrow to the things that we're most curious about. And also going back to connecting to what Tumi-san said about what we're tuning into. And I think that stems a lot from our own curiosities. So when I started learning how to shift my curiosities and my listening to the resilience or like how they've managed to go through what they've gone through, and then really listening for that, it's completely changed the way that I show up in my interactions. So I find it's like that listening to what we're curious about also co-creates what we're tuning into in our listening with other people. And so those are kind of the things that are coming up for me as listening to what everybody was saying. And I just wanted to share that. And I forgot to, I'm Jessica and from Toronto, Canada. And I am done speaking. Thank you.
Jessica, thank you so much for this contribution. It really resonates, the shifting the curiosity and moving from, as it were, a sort of a head-guided space into the heart space, and how the quality of the interaction then gets shaped by that. Thank you so much for your contribution and for coming onto the stage. I would like to thank everyone. We're going to move into closing now because we're 2 minutes past the hour. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm going to whiz through some announcements. So you can stay connected with the Presencing Institute programs, both the free and the paid ones, by going to the website, which is presencing.org, Presencing spelled presencing.org, where you can join our mailing list, you can browse through our offerings and programs. You can also connect with any of the moderators in this room or any other people that you've seen by just clicking into their profiles, and you can direct message them on Twitter or Instagram in people's bios. Make sure to follow the Theory U Club here on Clubhouse so that you can be notified when we have new events scheduled. We will be here every Tuesday at this time to sense together into the current moment, and we will be on the lookout for new topics each time. So we invite you to join the Gaia Journey session, which will happen in late May, and you will find details about that on our website. And also save the date for the Global Forum, which will happen on the 15th and 16th of June. And this year we are actually going to be working on a new experiential journey, which, by the way, is going to be tuning in more to listening rather than seeing. So make sure to stay tuned with that and sign up for our newsletter. And we hope that you enjoy the session with us today. We would like to, on behalf of the whole Moderators team, I thank you for being here, for participating, and have a very good week, and we look forward to seeing you again next time. Take care, everyone. Goodbye.